Today we are going to be going over how to prepare a 990 in the tax software. First, I'm going to go ahead and open up Engagement and the 2016 tax software as well. You will also want to have iChannel open to be able to pull in the prior year tax return. You're not actually going to pull it in, you're going to be viewing it only. For training purposes, we went ahead and pulled in the tax return to the binder. Once you get in Engagement, you are going to want to find the 990 training binder. The easiest way to do that is you click over here on Training. You can click over in the main box and type in 990 and that will find that for you. For training purposes, I'm going to check this binder out. So you'll open up that screen. Once you're in Engagement and you're ready to start on preparing the work papers, you're going to open up that box to let you sync the binder to your local file room. You're going to want to check out all of the work papers. Open this binder when synchronization is complete and hit Synchronize. While that is loading, I'm going to pull up the tax software. For 2016 is what we are going to be going over. The tax returns that we are going to be going over in training today are already finished. The work papers are already finished. So in our starting for this training, we are assuming that the work papers are finished. They were copied from binders that were already completed. And so we will not be preparing any work papers. You will be preparing those on your own. Now, we are going, for training purposes, I'm going to split these screens so you can see both of them at the same time. So I'm going to move this one over here to fill this side, and I'm going to move this one over here. Today we are going to be going over the full Form 990. We also have 990 EZs, which is the Kaufman Fund in the training binder. And we have another one that is Palm Village. Today we are going to be working with Dignity Period. It is one of our clients that operates internationally, overseas. And so what you're going to do is you're going to put this number, this is the client ID number we have in here for easy access. We're going to put that in there. And you see here there's a training session. Each binder will have, or each training binder in the tax software will have your own training to where you can practice. So I'm going to be going over the return that is already complete. I will not be entering any numbers in. I will just be showing you where they go, so we can show you how to move around the software a little bit easier. Once you are ready to start a return, also you will want to move it. You will want to move the task to yourself in XEM. XEM will be gone over with you in a separate training video. Okay, so what we are going to do is, I'm going to move this over a little bit. We're going to double click on the Dignity Period header that will drop down these boxes for categories. So we have the trial balance. I also want to note on this particular client, they had an audit as well. So the audit will take place first, and then once the audit is close to being wrapped up or already wrapped up, soon after we will prepare the tax return. So the main work papers that we will be working with today are going to be in this 8400 section. And again, these tax work papers were all copied from the actual client's binder that was already completed. So we are not preparing any of these work papers today. They were already prepared for us. So once you have the binder open, you have the tax return open, and you have the prior year return. And in the training binder, we have the prior year return right here in each section. So right now we're working on dignity period. Here's the 2016 return that you can look off of for ease of access. You can also pull the prior year return to compare that as well. First thing I like to do whenever I open up a binder, I like to make sure that we have all the work papers that we need to prepare the return. I compare it to last year's work papers to see if there are any tax work papers that we are missing, anything that is different from last year that we need to ask the client about, anything that just looks different that catches your eye and you think that we would need more information for. Okay, what we are going to do first is we are going to open up the federal trial balance. Once that opens, you want to make sure that all of your accounts are grouped, and I will show you what that looks like in just a second as this loads. Okay, for right now, I'm going to make this the whole screen. The way you can tell that if all of your accounts are grouped is you're going to see the sum of account groups. This is 0 right now, but if there were groups that were not grouped, if there were accounts that were not grouped, they would show up on this bottom line right here where it says sum of account groups. The way you would group those is you would go to the engagement tab, you would go to setup, account groupings. You would find the database that you are working on. We are working on dignity period, and you would do the 2016 or whatever year you're working on, the tax grouping. There would be a list of accounts in this column that were not grouped. You would find their appropriate grouping and mark this little box to move that account over to the highlighted account grouping. Because there are no accounts that need to be grouped, we are going to go ahead and close this. Okay, I'm going to move this to one side. We are going to be working with the trial balance first. Okay. Now, in the tax software, we have this tab called Government, Federal Government, and these pages are what the 990 actually, or what the tax return actually looks like. It's smaller here. Let me open that up larger for you. So this is what that actual return looks like. These buttons up here are to scroll page by page. You can go down or you can go up. This button right here, this government GI, means government to interview. This button is going to be your best friend. So for instance, you want to know where these contributions and grants are going to be inputted, and you're looking at the front page of the 990. You can click on this box. If it's yellow, if it's red, down here, if the box is red, you cannot do government to interview. That means that it's calculated. But if the box is yellow and this little blue thing is highlighted, then you can click government to interview, and that shows you which input screen you're going to enter those balances on. And you can also click back and it will take you back to the page that you were on before. Or for instance, if you want to start on the government screen and say you're inputting expenses and grants on this screen and you want to know, well, where does this flow through to on the 990? Which page does this go to? You can click that government screen and it'll show you where those are inputted, where those show up on the 990. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to move this back over. It's a little harder with one screen. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So what I like to do first is I like to enter in the financials first and then go through the informational inputs. Okay, we are ready to go. So we are going to start off with the balances. I also want to note as we're going through this, you never want to change any of the prior year numbers in the tax return or any of the beginning of the year numbers. These roll forward from the prior year tax return in our software, so you don't ever want to change those. So we are going to start on, I also want to show you this real quick. Okay, if you click on these blue highlighted pages, these are the pages that have information on them. So if they are black, that means they don't have information on them, and you probably won't need those for the current year tax return. Most of the information will be the same as last year. There are hardly ever any changes, but if there are, you will know. And as I'm clicking on these screens, you can see at the top that this shows you what is included in those input screens. So for instance, we are going to start on 990-11 and start putting in the income statement, the contributions. So we're going to double click on that. You can see that it shows that right there. We are going to double click on this. We're going to make this screen fit, and I'm going to kind of show you where these numbers are coming from on the trial balance. So if you notice the contributions received fundraising, if you see this code right here, number 3, fundraising events, 74,429, 74,429. The other, contributions received all other, is number 6. Here's the code. This is the cash portion, 341,544. And this is the non-cash right here. The non-cash portion, which is 701, and it's put on the same line as number 6, but in the non-cash column. That's going to be it for that page on this client. You can just hit the down button on the page down at the top of the screen, and we are going to scroll over and notice that they don't have any program revenue. Most of their revenue is from contributions and fundraising activities. They do have $20 in interest income, however, so this will go in the interest income line in the excluded column because it is related business income because of their income from their program activities, but it's not related or exempt function income. Okay. So the next page we are going to be looking at is this functional expense allocation work paper. So this is all of the expenses that the client has, and it is broken down between program services, management in general, and their fundraising services. This helps viewers see how much of their expense, how much of their money is being spent on their program, management, and fundraising. So what we want to see here is the program services. We would like to see the highest number possible. Some clients will give us the breakdown of how they want it, and some trial balances will already be grouped. This trial balance just happens to already be grouped for program management and fundraising, but we are going to go ahead and scroll down to show you where these are. Okay, so we have grants outside of the United States. Like I said earlier, this is a foreign organization. They operate in Ethiopia and different regions in Africa. So you can see that the grants that they dispersed were $159,000, and this ties to the trial balance. Most of our clients also have, I'm going to go back to the binder, most of our clients also have a functional expense allocation work paper. This makes it a lot easier to tie out the functional expenses to the tax return. And it also allocates between their different programs. So as you'll see on the top, these totals will help you tie out to the tax return. And if you scroll down, make these a little bit bigger. If you scroll down, you can see that this 159,500 or 159,551 is supposed to be program. You'll also see that these accounting services are always going to be management and general. They do not have anything to do with their program. They're day-to-day operation expenses. So those are going to be input in the management and general section on the accounting line here. I know it's a little hard to see with me going scrolling back and forth, so I apologize for that, but we have to do it all on one screen. Again, for the fundraising, it's $14,500. You will go ahead and put that in the fundraising column, and so on and so forth. Once you get down to the bottom here, not every line has a category, not every account has a category that is already on the 990, so other expenses are going to be listed at the bottom. So we're going to scroll down and you can see those here. They're not necessarily in order, but the balances are still input into the tax return. So you can see, for instance, postage and printing on the trial balance is first, but postage and printing on the tax return is second. That doesn't matter as long as it is in that other expense column. That is fine. And you'll see where we put those balances as well, the 1816, the 56478, and so on and so forth. So in order to tie this out easier, we are going to go to use the handy dandy government to interview form. This will actually take you to the first page, to the totals. So we are actually going to go, I happen to know that page 10 is the functional expense allocation page, and you're going to scroll down to the bottom. If I can get this, I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger so I can show you real quick. Okay, at the bottom, you're going to see this 241,837 in the program column. The next column is going to be the 49,369 and the 18,918 to follow. So you will see on here total program expenses 241,837, the 49,369 ties, and so does the 18,918. So we are good to go on this work paper. So what you will do, you will close the work paper once you know that everything is good on that, and you will come in here, you will right click on that work paper, and you will sign off as the preparer. It will then put your initials and the date that you signed off in this prepared by. When the reviewer reviews your work, they will do the same thing. They will right click, sign off as first reviewer, and then the final reviewer, the signer of the tax return, will do the same as the second reviewer. Okay, what we are going to do next is we're going to go back to the federal interview tab, and we are going to go to, so we were on this 990-14, that's where the functional expense allocation work papers, or I'm sorry, functional expense allocation input screen is. We are going to hit that next page button, and if there's more than one, I'll show you this. If there is more than one page, because this flows through from, there were too many accounts to show up on the first page, so we needed to create a second page. So you'll just go ahead and do next form again. This 990-15 you will not need to do anything with. This is prior year expenses. That rolls forward from the prior year tax return, so you will not change those numbers. The next is the balance sheet assets, so I'm going to bring this over. Again, you will not change any of these beginning of the year numbers. You will only be entering the end of the year numbers. So we will scroll up, and you can see that this cash balance is the 7352. If you scroll over, you can see the names of the accounts. For training purposes, I'm going to just keep it on this, and you can go back and see the names. Okay, so we have the savings and the temporary investments, the 350,019, and so on and so forth. That page is just the assets. So I'm going to scroll down on our trial balance. You will notice that there are no liabilities for this client. So we are going to go straight to the net assets portion, which is on the next page. So you will see unrestricted, temporarily restricted, and permanently restricted net assets. So in order to get these numbers, you're going to scroll down. You're going to see that this 352,305, well, that doesn't match up to this 432,775. What you're going to do is the unrestricted net assets is this total plus the income or loss from the year, and that you will see here at the bottom the 432,775, which matches this 432,775. The temporarily restricted net assets is this 5,000. And at the bottom of this page is where you will mark if they've had an audit or if their financial statements were compiled. For this client, they were audited by the independent contractor. And that is it. So we are going to go to the next page. The next page is going to show you any adjustments that need to be made to the tax return. Basically any book to tax differences. So it looks like there was a grant adjustment of $5,000 that could have been a prior period adjustment. And then there's a spring gala reporting adjustment, which is a difference that was on the financial statements. So the next page, this is where you're going to reconcile your revenue and expenses to the audited financial statements if there were any. This client had an audit, like I said earlier. Some clients do not, so you will not need to complete this page. I will now pull up the audited financial statements that I've pulled in from the prior binder. Dignity period issued audit. I'm going to make this smaller and pull it over to the screen, the side of the screen. and we are going to find the financial statements. Here is the assets, liabilities, and here is the income statement. I'm going to close my little notes here. Okay, so on this interview screen on the 990, it's telling you to enter in the revenue, gains, and other support per audited financial statements. So this is going to be the total revenue. So this 394,759 comes from this total support and revenue of 394,759. Anything that is grouped differently for book than it is tax is going to go on this line. So for instance, the fundraising event expenses are reported as expenses on the financial statements, but they're reported net revenue on the return. So that is our difference right here. You will not see that on the financial statements. You will see that on the functional expense allocation. You scroll down a little bit further and you need to balance that out with your total expenses and losses from the financial statements, which is this 314,289, 314,289. Again, you're backing this 4165 off of the top. You also need to do that on the bottom. All right. So that is it on the financial information. For balancing purposes, I'm going to go ahead and open this up. You always want to go ahead and check your diagnostics. If you are out of balance, there will be a caution diagnostic here. This says informational. There will be a caution diagnostic or a warning diagnostic that will let you know that you're out of balance and how much you are out of balance. If that happens, just go to your balance sheet, go through the return, and see if there was maybe a transposition error or if you missed an account. Most of the time it's an easy fix and it's just a small mistake and you just update the page that needs to be updated. Okay, I'm going to close out of this interview screen. The next part I like to do after I get in all the financial balances is work on the schedules. So I'm going to pull this to the side again. And we're going to work on Schedule A. And let me show you what that looks like in the government screen first. So Schedule A is showing the public charity status of the organization. You will never change this on Part 1. This comes from their determination letter from the IRS. This is entered on screen A1. Over here, on this side right here. What you will do though is, let me take you back to page 2 of Schedule A. This is the important page. Let me maximize this so you can see this. So this is the public support test for the charity. This schedule is a rolling 5 years. So because this entity was incorporated in 2014, I believe, it is only reporting 3 years. If it was in business longer, it would report 2012 through 2016. So it's a rolling 5 years. So you will use interview screen A2 to input the amount. Again, we will not change the 2014 or 2015 numbers. We are only working on the current year column. So you will see over here it says gifts, grants, contributions, and membership fees received. I'm going to scoot this over, bring up the trial balance, and you will see that this is contributions plus contributions equals this 416,764, or I'm sorry, 416,674. that will go in this column underneath the contributions, grants, and gifts. If you scroll down a little bit further, this is where you will enter in your interest dividends from the trial balance right here. And that is it for that page. Going to the next interview screen. We are required to disclose any person who gives in excess of 2% of the last 5 rolling, or of the past 5 years, in excess of the 2%. So let me show you what that looks like on page 2 of Schedule A. If you scroll down, you'll see this line 5, total portions of contributions by each person included on line 1, that exceeds 2% of the amount shown on line 11. Line 11 is the total revenue for the last 5 years. Anyone that contributes in 2% in excess of that is required to be reported. So if you double click on this blue box, you will see the excess contributions. You'll see the total contributions that they have given, and you'll see the excess contributions that are being reported. There is a work paper for this. Let me go back to the government interview screen and show you what that looks like. We're going to go to A3. Going to scroll down so you can see the donor information, and we are going to go to that work paper. So it's going to be on the work paper, donations above 5,000 in this particular binder for this client. So if you notice, Mike and Lynn Coatney did not give any amount during 2016, so we just put a 0 there. Lewis and Helen Wall did not give in excess of 2% of the total contributions for this year, but they have given in the past. So we want to continue to enter in their contributions because maybe next year they would be in excess. So we want to show their total contributions. So for instance, if you just search on the spreadsheet for Wall, you will see Dr. Leonard Lewis and Helen Wall. The 3875, the 3876, which is rounded. You notice that they did not show up on the excess contribution list that was required to be disclosed. But Mr. Mike and Lynn Coatney will. So we will find their name. And you'll notice that we highlight these for ease of access to review, for ease of review. So Mike and Lynn Coatney Family Foundation Fund, they gave $255,000. That is where these are going to go, and so on and so forth. So that is any donors who gave in excess of 2%. Next, we are going to click over to Schedule B. Schedule B is a schedule of all contributors who gave more than $5,000. Some organizations are so large that they have hundreds of people that give over $5,000. So sometimes we do a different test. We are allowed to do either $5,000 or 2% of the amount on line I on Form 990, Part 8, line 1H. Or on 990 Easy, line 1. For this client, we only do anyone who gave $5,000 or more. So we are going to go back to the interview screen. We are going to go to B-1, and you will see they have the contributor's name, address, city, state, zip code, and the amount of contributions they received. We'll also need to have this code in here for it to show up correctly. Most of them we will mark person. If they have a non-cash contribution, you will put that as number 3 as non-cash. If they have non-cash contributions, you are also required to give a description of the property as well as the fair market value or the estimated value of the property and the date the organization received the donation. So for instance, let's go ahead and move this over to the side. And we will look up the first one. I also want to note if there is an interview screen where you have to enter in a contributor's name and you have to scroll down and it has a corresponding line, like this is letter A and this is letter A. If you are clicking and you're like, well, who was this again? I don't remember who this was. Instead of scrolling up to find that person's name, if you notice down here at the bottom right here, it'll show that this was Audrey's donation. So that makes it a lot easier, so there is not a lot of scrolling up and down or back and forth. So we will look for Audrey on our spreadsheet, and you'll see she gave the $5,100. You will notice as I just scroll through here real quick, all of the highlighted lines are reported on Schedule B and or Schedule A. Okay, so you can see that. And that is Schedule B. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this work paper. And again, when this work paper is completed, you will want to go ahead and right-click and sign off as preparer. The next schedule, as you can see by the blue highlighted items, is, I don't believe there's anything on Schedule D for dignity period. I believe that is just blank. They don't have any fixed assets. So that is correct. So that's an example of if you enter anything on a screen and then you realize that you don't need that screen and you don't want that to be blue because you made a mistake, you entered something in there wrong, you can go up to options and reset input. And if you want to delete the information that you put in there by mistake, you'll go to that options, reset input, and you'll hit OK. So that's good if you have any blank lines, if you added accounts and then you realize you didn't need them, you'll just delete that information so those blank lines won't show up on the tax return. So it looks much cleaner. Okay, the next schedule that they have is Schedule F because they are for an organization who does activities outside of the United States. So this first page, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Okay, this first page will most likely stay the same. This is a statement saying how they monitor their grants. This is going to be, the code 9 is listing the region in which the activities took place. So down here, number 9, you can see all these different countries where their activities took place. They do not have any regions or offices in that region, and they do not have any employees that stay in that region. The total expenditures for the region should match the program expenses on page 10, which they will also show up on page 2 at the bottom of the page as well. So we are going to go back to that screen, that F1 screen, So again, you're going to list the total program expenses for that region. They might operate in more than one region. We will have the breakout of what expenses were incurred in each region. Down here you will describe the list, or describe the different services that were provided. For this client, it's mostly the same every year. For some clients, the activity stays the same, but they might have expanded to different regions of the world. So you just need to make sure to pay attention to that and make sure we clarify with the client if they are expanding into other regions. We're going to click that down button and we are going to record what the who the grants were given to. So this grant was given to this McKell University Research Fund in the amount of $159,551. You will notice that this is the same amount as page 10, total grants. So this will need to tie out to that other screen. I also want to note, if you're flipping back and forth to screens like I am, instead of closing out of the screen, going to federal government and opening another screen, you can hit this back button right here and that will take you to the previous page that you were on, no matter if that's the interview screen or the government screen, which is very nice when you are clicking back and forth a lot. So this lists the amount of the grant. The code 9 is the region in which they were serving those people, and this lists the purpose of the grant. And the valuation, which is cash, because it was a cash donation or a check, and how they dispersed that money to that other organization. So they wired that information over. There was no non-cash assistance, so we don't need to do anything there. Okay, next we are going to flip to fundraising expenses. So I'm going to close out of this. We are going to make this smaller and go back to the binder. So we know from the trial balance that they had fundraising activities. You can see the fundraising income here, as well as the direct expenses here. So these are all the fundraising expenses they incurred for their fundraising activity. We have in the binder, we have a Schedule G summary, which I like because it is easy to tie to the tax return. I'll make this a little bigger. So you'll see the gross receipts. This is linked to the trial balance. And let me show you where this is coming from. Okay. So the gross receipts is coming from this fundraising income right here in the net fundraising section, as well as the contributions received from the fundraising up here, because down here is the fundraising revenue. Up here is the contributions, because we need to break that out for 990 purposes. So you can see that the total of those two are the 89,350. You're going to list the contributions separately to come to the gross income, which is 14,921. We are also going to scroll down to the fundraising expenses, and if you click on here, you're going to input these. We know that this facility costs, as well as this other facility cost, you add those together, that equals the 2,077. We put that there. The food and beverages are these the other amounts. If I can move this over. So those are the 7260 and the 1121. You can see that the food and beverage costs here, as well as the wine pull expense. There were no entertainment costs, non-cash prizes, or cash prizes for this client this year. So the other direct expenses are the rest of the expenses that are not categorized among these. These categories match the tax return. I'm going to pull up Schedule G for you and show you where you will be tying this at, or entering this information. So on G2, the Schedule G stands for gaming, so that might be a little easy for you to remember. So you will put the type of event, which was their spring gala, your gross receipts from this line, your charitable contributions from this, and on the front page of Schedule G, it will show your gross income, and I will show that to you in a second. So your rent and facility cost goes here, other direct expenses, and food and beverage. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Okay. They didn't have any other gaming activities, so we don't need to worry about that. And you can close out of here, go to Federal to Government, and go to Schedule G, page 2. You can see here, I'm gonna make this smaller again. You can see here that this matches this work paper. That's why we have this. It's a lot cleaner and a lot easier to tie it out to the tax return. You can also see over here, let me scroll down, you can see that the direct expense summary is this 41021, and the net income, or actually net loss, is going to be this 26,100, which also is going to tie to the trial balance. This 26,100 will tie to this. Okay? So we are going to close out of this. And the next schedule is Schedule O. Schedule O is a flow over schedule. Anything that does not fit on any of these pages. For example, if any of the descriptions do not fit, if they run off, they're too long to fit on these lines, such as this one, it will go to Schedule O and continue the verbiage there, as you can see here. This was the other, the rest of that sentence from that other page. So Schedule O is for any other information that the IRS might need or require. So it looks like we have to explain that they have an audit committee, an audit board, and what they want to know is who handles the oversight of that audit. So we're just disclosing that 2016 is the first year. So this is the first year for the process, and the process hasn't changed from prior year because it's not applicable. Okay, what I like to do next, now that we are done inputting the financial information, we are done with the schedules. Now, if you go to page 1, you will see that there is all this other information that we are still needing that we have not input. On pages 3 through 6, we have these required schedule checklists that we also need to complete. I like saving that for last. So what we are going to do is we are going to go to 990-4, and you will not need the trial balance for this information. They are just questions. So a lot of them will stay the same from year to year. Unless they have something different, a lot of these questions will stay year to year. But you want to make sure that they still apply, and you want to read through them to make sure another question that is not marked does not apply for this year, and if it does, you will mark that box. So for instance, the organization's separate or consolidated financial statements for the tax year include a footnote that addresses the organization's liability for uncertain tax positions. So this is listed in the audit, so we need to disclose that on the tax return as well. And you will just go through here and see, read through these questions and see if they apply or not. And yes, we did obtain separate independent audited financial statements. We did do business in foreign country, as well as we reported more than $15,000 in gross income from fundraising events, and that was the Schedule G. So you'll notice that in this, in these parentheses, that will tell you what page that you will need to complete. So this is G2, so you will go to that interview screen and complete the G2. So that will help you to make sure that you are completing the right schedules for those questions that we are answering. So we will scroll down. The same thing with these. These are just asking how do they make the 990 available for public inspection. 990s are required to be put on GuideStar. They are open for public inspection. Anyone in the public can look at them or request these documents. These normally stay the same every year. They will not change unless they have a change in their policy. Now we are getting to, they're wanting to know how many 1099s were issued by the organization to other organizations. So if you go to the work papers, you will see the 2016 1096, which is the summary of the 1099s. So you'll see where it asks for number reported in box 3 of Form 1096. You will see here total number of forms. Box 3 on your 1096 is 3. So we'll mark that with the tax return check mark. And if you don't know how to do that, you will go here to, it looks like they don't have it on here, but you'll see a column that says PDF flyer or PD flyer, and you'll see a tick mark for the tax return. You'll also see letter connectors, number connectors, and things of that nature to help you tie out and show that you double checked your work on those work papers and that they tie to the tax return. Okay, we're going to scroll down. You want to mark that they did not have any financial accounts in foreign countries. Most of our clients do not, but you want to double check that. These boxes will most likely be the same as last year. You want to double check that as well to make sure. And the same thing for their policies on the next form. They, for the conflict of interest policy, etc., whistleblower policy, most of those will stay the same. If they have one the year before, chances are they did not get rid of it. We also want to disclose how, if they compensate any officers or anything like this. So we're going to go to the next page. Now they're asking for the number of voting members in the governing body. So we have a work paper in here that lists, I believe it's in this 2016 tax questions that were given to us by the client, and she lists on here who was on the board and how many hours. So there's Lewis, Helen, Matt, and Lynn Coatney. So that is 4 members of the board. So we're going to enter 4 in on here, and they all have voting power, so they are independent. Okay, that is going to be it on that page. Most likely these will stay the same. Just trying to show you where those will be inputted. Okay, here on 990-9 interview screen, this is where you're going to enter in the officers, directors, trustees, key employees, etc. And that information was given to us in this work paper. You can see Lewis Wall 10 hours, Helen 20 hours, Matt 3, and Lynn 1. So that is where you will report this information. If they are compensated, these board members are not compensated. If you have board members that are compensated or key employees that are compensated, their compensation will go in this section right here. You also want to make sure if you are adding new board members that you mark these boxes. If they are an officer or a trustee or director, you want to make sure that these boxes are correct. Okay. And that is going to be it for that. On the next page, you want to mark that no, none of them were compensated. If they were compensated, you will not check that box, obviously. And that is going to be it for the board members. Okay, so that is it for the input screens. Now you're probably wondering, well, how do I tie all this out to my trial balance? How do I make sure, one last final check to make sure that everything balances and make sure everything flows through the right screen and it shows up on the right government form. So what I normally do is I will have the trial balance open on one screen, I will have the prior year tax return open on one screen, and I will have the current year tax return open on one screen. And I will go line for line and make sure the name matches last year. If they do not have any changes, I will make sure that the employee identification number matches. I will go line by line and make sure that their information, the client information, is correct. You also want to go through the work papers to make sure that these tie out. They also will give you the number of volunteers as well, and that will be input on the first screen. If you scroll down, you'll see the number of volunteers. That will change probably every year, and so you want to make sure that we get that information from the client. Let me go back to page 1 and scroll down. You'll see that I'm going to make this, pull this to this side of the screen. And okay, here we go. I'm going to pull up the trial balance and kind of quickly show you. I'm going to quickly show you how this ties out. Okay, so here we have the contributions, grants, program revenue, all of that. You can see here that that is the 416,674. Okay, you have the $20 in interest income, and then you have this $26,100 for fundraising income. Okay, you also scroll down and it will show you your expenses and your net income. So you always want to make sure that your net income matches the tax return. I'm going to go down to the next page. One thing I did not mention yet is this page 2. Okay, so page 2 is where we show the public the organization's mission and the program. So what they are spending their money on, what are they giving, who are they giving grants to, and what they are for. Most likely, these program descriptions are not going to change unless they do something different, unless they have numbers in here that have to do with how many people they helped or different things like that. So where we are getting these numbers is going to come from either the client will tell us how to break out their program expenses into each of their programs. For this client, it is included in the functional expense allocation work paper. if you scroll to the side here, it breaks out for each program based on the allocations below that were given to us. The summary is here, and it breaks out program expense for, as well as the grants. We have a work paper for the grants that breaks it out into each program. We have the expense of $120,723, which is the first program, and then we have $121,114, which is the second program. So you want to make sure that those are updated, and if they have audited financial statements, most likely those program descriptions will be in those audited financial statements, and we want to make sure that we tie those out and we match those from the audited financial statements to the tax return. This total program service expenses on the bottom of page 2 will need to match page 10 of the functional expense statement, and you can see here that it does. This is the program expense column, and it matches that first page. Okay, so we are going to go back to page 2. We're going to scroll through page 3, and you can see that these are the questions that we were answered, and if we answered yes to this question, then we must complete Schedule A, which we did. The same thing for Schedule B. This tells us whether or not those schedules need to be completed. Okay. These are just more questions. You can go through these and read these on your own. I'm not going to get into this. This is where the number of 1099s show up on page 5. You scroll down and you'll see more of those questions that you can read through. You'll see the governing body. And I believe your other 990 training that you have listened to, the webinar, goes through each page of the 990 and explains what is on it. So I am not going to go through these in too much detail. I just want you to be familiar of what they look like and where those numbers that were put on the input screens flow to. And that, like I said before, this government to interview link, when highlighted, is going to be your best friend. It's going to make it a lot easier to toggle back and forth between those screens. You'll see on page 9 that we have the fundraising event contributions that we had entered on Schedule G. Those will tie out to this, as well as the total contributions and total revenue. Okay, I think that is about it as far as preparing the 990. I do want to also mention that whenever you are preparing the 990, before you turn it in for review, you want to make sure that these diagnostics, that this says informational, and you also want to make sure to go through, and even though it says informational, that it's going to accept the return for e-filing, you want to make sure that there aren't any of these that you can clear easily. A lot of these, the ones that are left on here, you cannot clear. They're just standard informational diagnostics, which those are completely fine. You do not want to hand in a return, though, that has a caution diagnostic or a caution diagnostic or a warning diagnostic, unless you talk to the detail reviewer and explain that situation. If you're having problems with it or you can't figure it out, you can always talk to the detail reviewer or the engagement manager, and they can help you with that situation. What I also like to do before I turn in the return is I will go to this print preview screen. We will unclick client and unclick government, so we are just looking at this accountant box. It will pull this up, and I like to have the prior year tax return PDF version open so I can compare them side to side and scroll through quickly to make sure that there's nothing that I see out of the ordinary, that they look the same. Whenever you're scrolling down through screens, you tend to miss stuff. So you can see that this Federal Form 990 was qualified. That means, and then it was accepted by the IRS. These are your inputs. These inputs are okay. These are for prior year numbers. If you have a list of input overrides on here, you might want to double check those to make sure that you weren't overriding something that was supposed to be calculated. So you'll scroll through here, you'll see the transmittal letter being addressed to Dr. Wall. This has the instructions as well. The 8879 EO is the form that the client will sign that gives us permission to electronically file their tax return. You'll also notice that you will have the paid preparer information down here. For 990s, it's going to be Karen, Jeanette, Rick Eberly, or Guy Crouch. Those are the ones who sign our 990s in our nonprofit area. You also want to read through these descriptions to make sure that there are not any spelling mistakes, any spacing issues. Sometimes there are spacing issues that just happen if you had copied and pasted something from, say, a Word document. Sometimes it doesn't format correctly. You just want to make sure that it's a clean copy for the reviewer. This one looks good, obviously, because it was already reviewed and signed off on and filed. So I do want to show you a little bit on Schedule O. I also know that this is a lot to comprehend at first. So if you have any questions, you can let the engagement manager know, the detail reviewer know, and they will be glad to help you through any issues that you may be having. It is a lot to learn at first. Okay, so we are scrolling down to the bottom. So Schedule O has a lot of information on it. It has a lot of flow-through information, supplemental information to the prior schedules. The mission statement, their mission statement is very long, so it wouldn't fit on the 2 or 3 lines that were on page 1. So it flows through to the back page of Schedule O, where the viewer can continue reading about the organization, as well as the program descriptions and any of their policies that they may have that do not fit on those explanation lines given in those schedules. Okay, so that is it for the tax return. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. You want to make sure that you save also while you're in here, to make sure if you change any numbers, you want to make sure you hit this 1 + 1 = 2 button. This will calculate the return and update those numbers. Okay, so you want to go ahead and click File. You would normally click Save, but since this return was already finished, I'm not going to click that. You want to click Save and Exit. On this, I'm going to click No. You should not have that warning box come up. Save changes for return. Normally you would click Yes, but you want to click No for this. I'm also going to close the trial balance. We confirmed that all the balances tie out to the tax return. And then I'm going to go back to the binder. You want to make sure that these work papers are signed off by the preparer before you turn it in for review. The reviewer cannot sign off on the work papers or review them until their preparer has signed off first. I also want to note that there is a tax checklist that you must do after you prepare the tax return. The 990 checklist is rather lengthy. This one is about 9 pages. So what you will do is you will go through these questions and answer them yes, no, or or not applicable. Okay? I'm not going to go through these with you. You can read them on your own. But you do want to make sure that you complete this checklist. Okay? And you can get this from the U drive, I believe. And I will show you how to get there real quick. So if you go over here, you're going to go to the U drive. You're going to go to actually, you're going to go to the N drive. I'm sorry. You're going to go to the N drive. You're going to go to current checklists. You're going to go to 990. Then you'll have a folder for the year that you're working on. So there'll be a 2017 folder soon. And you're going to pick the checklist that you are working on. So we have 990s, which are full forms, which are over threshold of gross receipts of we have the 990 easies, we have the 990 Ts, and I don't believe that you will be getting into those. We also have the PF. The 1023 does not matter. Most of the ones that you will be needing is the 990 checklist or the 990 easy checklist, and you can tell which form you're filing by the front page of the tax return. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. All of these items will be signed off on, and you will turn it into the reviewer. So that will be the end of this training. If you have any questions, please feel free to let your supervisor know, or the engagement manager, the detail reviewer, or anyone in the nonprofit area. So please let us know if you have any questions, and we hope that you have a great day.